Welcome to Scary Stories, Real or Written. Each of the following tales could be true or completely made up. Can you tell which is which? Let's begin. So, a long time ago, my husband had this doll that looked like a little boy wearing a mostly white outfit. He got it when he was very young from someone his father knew. He really seemed to love this doll, but I couldn't stand it. Just the sight of it made me super uncomfortable. So, when my husband decided to give the doll its own room, I was kind of relieved, even though I couldn't for the life of me understand why this thing was so special it deserved its own bedroom. It had a bed, toys, pillows, everything, even a special little chair to sit in. It was a little much, if you ask me, but whatever. If I had had it my way, the wretched thing would have been locked away in the attic the day we moved into the house. But I knew my husband would never allow that. At least, not per mine or anyone else's suggestion. Some things people need to learn and come to terms with for themselves. This weird little doll was like his most prized possession. Anyway, the first thing he used to do when he came home every evening was go upstairs to say hello to Bobby, because he doesn't want him to feel forgotten. Lord have mercy. But whatever keeps the peace. Still, I hated being alone with that thing. I never felt like I was alone in the house. Sometimes I would have to go upstairs and walk by the room, and once or twice, I swore I'd seen its head turn toward me slightly. And then, sometimes when I would be downstairs, I'd swear I would hear the floor making tiny little creaks, as if a small child was up there tiptoeing around trying to be sneaky. Every day, I counted down the hours until my husband would come home, if nothing else, so I would have a reason to not feel alone and someone to blame for any weird noises. After a while of suffering in silence, day in and day out, with this creepy little thing, observing my every move from a distance, every day, I eventually broke down and decided to talk to my husband about moving the thing to the attic. Just to see what he would say, but my expectations weren't very high. I told him everything. The footsteps, the way it would twist its head to get a better look at me with those beady little eyes. Everything. I told him, I hate to say it, but mentally and emotionally, I'm at a point of where if this thing doesn't go away, then I will. He wasn't happy, but he understood and recalled some of the weird and less than acceptable things that doll was responsible for when he was younger, and finally conceded, much to my pleasure, that he would lock the hideous thing away in the attic. I told him thank you for understanding and made it abundantly clear that I wanted that doll moved to its new dark and cozy attic bedroom immediately after dinner. He begrudgingly agreed. Soon as he put his plate away in the sink, he stalked off up the stairs and into Bobby's room. I heard him talking to it, quietly and with a gentle voice, and I couldn't help but stand at the foot of the steps, eavesdropping. I heard him say, I know, I'm sorry, it's not my fault, but she's uncomfortable, and I can't have that. Followed by a loud bang, like something being thrown at the wall. I then heard my husband say, see, this is what I'm talking about, I can't have any of this, and saw a shadow of him carrying the doll in a football hold pass by the top of the stairs and on down the hallway. I heard the attic door creak open and the ladder squeaking as my husband ascended into the creepiest part of the house, all the while holding the creepiest thing in the house. A couple minutes later, I heard the attic door drop shut and saw my husband begin making his way down the stairs. Well, "The deed is done," he announced. I told him thank you, and we spent the rest of the evening in the living room until bedtime. And let me tell you, I slept the best that night that I had slept in months. The next day, I woke up, and for the first time since living here, felt normal. Like I could clean the kitchen with my back turned, or sit down and read a book after lunch, without feeling a beady set of doll eyes gazing at me from the top of the staircase. I thought at one point I heard something like a thud, but I told myself it's just the house settling. That doll is locked up in a box in the attic. No reason for me to think he's scurrying around upstairs. But a little while later, I heard a knock on the door. I was hesitant on answering at first, seeing as though I wasn't expecting anyone. But when I peeked out the window and saw a couple of little boys in school uniforms standing a little ways back from the door, holding their bicycles, I opened the door. I told them hello and asked if they were okay. "We're okay, ma'am, but that doll in your upstairs window is kind of weird," one of the boys stated. "He is weird, you're right about that. But what exactly happened?" I asked them. "He laughed at us," one of the boys replied. I could see they were both genuinely disturbed, so I asked them, "And when did this happen? Don't worry, my husband locked him in the attic last night, so he shouldn't bother you anymore." "Are you sure he put him in the attic, ma'am? Because it happened just now, right before we came to the door." I froze. I genuinely didn't know what to say. If I went upstairs and saw that hideous thing sitting in front of the window, instead of being locked up in the attic where it should be, I'm going to pass away from fright immediately. I told the boys I would let my husband know so he could deal with the doll appropriately when he gets home, and apologize to them, and then close the door as they turned to leave. As soon as they were gone, I ran to my bedroom, locked the door, and sat down and cried. Still 2 more hours before he would be home, and there's a very high likelihood that thing has escaped its prison and is sitting there waiting for me to fall asleep tonight so it can, I don't know, kill me or something. After what felt like an eternity, I heard the front door open and heard him call my name, confused. I opened the bedroom door a bit and called out to let him know where I was. "What are you doing? Are you okay?" he asked, genuinely concerned. I told him about the boys' visit a little while ago, what they said, and now I'm afraid that doll has escaped the attic. And if it has indeed escaped the attic, I didn't want to risk being in any way accessible to it. My husband stood there, listening. His eyes grew wide with concern as he did. And by the time I was done talking, he was already flying up the stairs. "Oh my God," I heard him call out, and then almost immediately after, heard him rush down the hall, slam the attic door open, and threw himself up the ladder. This was followed by the sound of something heavy being dragged, and what sounded like something being slammed, followed by something heavy being dropped. By the time he came downstairs, my husband was sweating and shaking, and his eyes looked like he had just seen hell. He's back in there, in my old wooden trunk with the heaviest box I could find sitting on top of it. I'm sorry, I have no idea how it escaped. It's okay, I just really hope he stays this time." "I could more than agree with that," my husband admitted. He decided to stay home from work the next day, and I was more than thankful about that. He didn't want me to be alone in case the doll escaped its prison again. Oh, but it did escape again. Multiple times. No matter what my husband did, or how he did it, every day without fail. By morning, the darn thing would be back in its original bedroom, staring out the window and staring disdainfully at anyone unfortunate enough to cross in front of the house. A time or two we heard it up there, shuffling around, and even the occasional giggle. For years, I lived like this, day in and day out, going to bed at night and wondering if it would be the last time I shut my eyes. Why wouldn't he just get rid of it entirely? I don't know. Maybe he forced himself to live with it because he was afraid of it. Maybe the thing kept him in some kind of trance to keep him bonded to it. Who knows? All I know is my husband is lucky I love him, or I would have set fire to the blasted thing a long time ago and buried the ashes. That doll was evil incarnate. And even though this whole story is in the past, and my husband has since passed away, and the demon doll has been rehomed, I don't know if I will ever be healed from the trauma of its presence. To this day, when I walk past old houses that remind me of where I used to live, sometimes I swear I see him. That same white outfit, that same face with those beady little eyes staring out from an upstairs window, waiting. It started off as something simple. We just wanted to save a little money. There was a secondhand store a few miles from here, a place that sold old furniture, odds and ends, and sometimes antiques. The owner said that they'd just gotten a beautiful set of bunk beds in, barely used, good condition. The moment I saw them, I thought they'd be perfect for the kids. Strong wood, nice finish, even came with a built-in ladder. They were proud of those beds when we brought them home, I'll tell you that. Slept sound the first couple of nights, and everything was just fine. Then, about a week later, our youngest started waking up crying in the middle of the night. He said there was a witch in the room. I remember kneeling beside his bed, brushing his hair out of his eyes, and asking what he meant. He said, "She stands in the corner by the bed, Mama. She watches me." Now, I'd always believed kids had big imaginations. Monsters under the bed, shadows in the closet. You tell them it's all in their heads, and usually that's the end of it. But something in his voice that night, it was different. He wasn't just scared, he was convinced. I didn't think much of it until a couple of nights later, when my daughter started waking up too. She said she'd heard whispering. A lady's voice, she told me. She says my name, but she doesn't sound nice. After that, the house didn't feel the same. You could feel it, that tension in the air that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Sometimes I'd walk past their room and the radio would just click on by itself, static. Then a voice, faint and low, like it was struggling to come through. I'd turn it off, walk away, and a few minutes later, click, on again. My husband didn't believe me at first. He thought maybe the wiring was bad or a neighbor's frequency was bleeding through. You always try to find a reason, right? You want to find a reason because the alternative doesn't make sense. Then one night, he came downstairs, pale as a ghost. Said he'd just seen something in the hallway, something that looked like a person but wasn't moving right. He said it kind of glided across, just out the corner of his eye, and when he flipped the light on, there was nothing there. After that, we both started losing sleep. Every creak, every sound made us jump. The house would groan at night like it was breathing. I'd wake up sometimes and swear I heard footsteps coming from the kids' room, slow, measured steps. And then came that night, the night everything came to a head. My husband had to work late. It was just me and the kids. I took them in, said their prayers with them, and went to the kitchen to clean up. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator. Then suddenly, bang! The back door slammed so hard it rattled the dishes in the cabinet. My heart jumped into my throat. I ran to the door, but it was still locked tight. Not a soul outside. The porch light swayed, but there wasn't even a breeze. Before I could make sense of it, I heard my son scream upstairs. It wasn't a normal bad dream scream. It was pure terror, the kind that freezes your blood. I bolted up the stairs so fast I nearly tripped. He was sitting in the corner of the room, crying, his little body shaking like a leaf. When I tried to touch him, he pulled back and pointed at the bunk bed. "She was here again," he said. "She said she's coming for me next time." I looked toward the bunk beds, and I swear, for just a second, I thought I saw the impression of someone sitting on the top bunk, like the mattress dipped ever so slightly under invisible weight. And then it lifted, like whoever or whatever had been there had just stood up. That was it for me. I grabbed both kids and got them out of that room. I called my husband and told him to come home now. He didn't even argue. When he got there, I could see he was already shaken. He said that while he was locking up at work, he thought he heard a woman's voice, whisper his name right in his ear. When he stepped into the kids' room, the radio turned on by itself again. Loud, static screaming through the speakers. And then a man's voice, clear as day, said, "You're not welcome here." That sound, that voice, sent the kids into hysterics. My husband grabbed them, and we ran out that house right then and there. We stayed with his parents for a while. It took us a few days to even talk about what had happened. But when we did, we both knew the same thing. It all started when we brought those bunk beds home. A few days later, we arranged for someone to haul them off. I didn't care where they went as long as it wasn't here. I heard later that the man who took them stored them in his barn. From what I've been told, that barn caught fire not long after, burned to the ground. We never saw those beds again, and I've never slept right since. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear it, that faint click, like an old radio turning on by itself. And I'll freeze, waiting for the static, waiting for that voice. But it never comes. Not anymore. So let's see how well you did tonight. Let's talk about our first story, where the wife is forced to live with a very creepy doll against her will until her husband finally agrees to put the doll away into the attic, but the doll decided he wasn't agreeable with his new room. That story was 100% true. This is the story of Robert the Doll, told from the perspective of Jean's wife. Jean, whose legal first name was also Robert, was gifted the doll by a housekeeper that worked for Robert's father, and not long after the doll arrived, strange things started happening. But despite all that, Jean kept the doll throughout his life, even after he got married. After Jean died in 1974, the doll passed through a few owners before being donated to the East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida in 1994. Now, as for our next story, where a family buys a set of bunk beds for their children from a thrift store, and what was meant to be a purchase intended for children's sweet dreams quickly became a living nightmare for the entire family. That story was also 100% true, and it is the story of the Tallman bunk beds. In 1987, in Horicon, Wisconsin, the Tallman family began to experience a variety of frightening paranormal events almost immediately after buying the set of bunk beds. These included hearing strange noises, seeing apparitions, finding objects moved, and having their children report seeing figures with red eyes and being threatened. The experiences became so intense that the family eventually felt led to leave their home completely, despite even going so far as to bring a priest in to get rid of the evil, but to no avail. As for the bunk beds, they eventually made their way to a landfill. So, how did you do? Let me know in the comments if you guessed correctly, or why you guessed what you did, and feel free to leave ideas for future episodes if you wish. If you would like to submit a story to be used in a future episode, look for the Google form link in either the channel description or the video description. I look forward to hearing from you and reading your stories, and I hope you look forward to hearing from me again next week.